Jalen Rose, not only are you a student of the game of basketball, the game of life, but you're also a student of the game of sports media. You've been in the game for so long that you understand how everything works. And you pointed out to me that basically we talk about 5 teams in the NFL. Whether they're winning or whether they're losing, there seems to be like 5 or 6 teams that are the only teams that we recognize as sports media. And one of those teams is 1-5 right now, the New York Giants. Yet still, they dominate the headlines. They capture the collective conscious of the sports media because there's always drama around them, and that drama is always around Odell Beckham. And here is the latest from the Giants owner, John Mara.
I wish he would create the headlines by his play on the field as opposed to what he says as he's off the field. I think he needs to do a little more playing, a little less talking.
A little more playing and a little less talking. What do you think about that, Mr. Rose?
I have no problem with the owner speaking facts, especially when he just invested in Odell. Now remember, the last couple of years, we have been talking and the Giants have been deciding whether they should invest in their really talented wide receiver, who's shown a level of promise and potential that has been outstanding as it relates to his catches, his yards, and his touchdowns. However, in a team dynamic, when you decide to give him this level of financial commitment, which ownership did, you also expect that guy to be less about me and invest in we. And when you see that trait continuing to foster itself after you already gave him a big deal, he's clearly frustrated. Now, again, I'm not going to put all of the Giants' issues on Odell Beckham Jr. They don't have an offensive line. The defense hasn't been as stout as you hoped. They have not solved their issues at quarterback. They tried to bench Eli Manning last year, and then the fans and the media went into an uproar. So they put him back out there, and rightfully so drafted Saquon Barkley, but still didn't find a way to get a quarterback. So all of their issues aren't on Odell, but at some point, being so talented in a locker room where you're in a position of leadership, he has to find a way to guide his squad and have the focus be about being our best selves on Sunday, Monday, and Thursday, not on antics, not on sideshows, not on things that become a distraction and snowball when you're losing.
This is interesting because you said rightfully so they drafted Saquon Barkley, but with the play of Eli Manning, his obvious decline in performance, don't you think if they could go back in time, they would have picked one of the great quarterbacks in this rookie class instead of Saquon?
Not at all. I got a layup for you. He was right in New York. He was just playing for the Jets. Why don't you go and find a way to get Teddy Bridgewater? He was available. Saints didn't give up too much to get him. He's a proven commodity. You didn't have to necessarily draft a rookie in order to lead the franchise going forward. They just needed a quarterback. And so they didn't address that. I said this on this program a couple of years ago, and people thought I was crazy. The Odell Beckham and the Giants relationship just happened at the wrong time. For anybody that's paying attention to football, when your wide receiver is not only your best player, your leader, and your highest paid player, that dynamic does not work in the NFL. It just does not play out.
Jalen Rose, do you think the Giants, who are 1-5, they're not going to make the playoffs? The season is more or less a rebuilding season. Do you think they should trade Eli Manning to a contender and get some pieces back?
Well, the last time I checked, didn't you say they were 1-5? I would think that his trade value isn't as high as you would have hoped, especially after the season has already started. That was something that you should try to do around the draft. Maybe something you do in the offseason. Once the season starts, you're basically stuck with them. And here's what's going to happen. They're going to bench them, but it's still not going to be the issue. It's not going to solve all of their issues. That's my point. Football, like basketball, is a salary cap-driven sport. It's only so many pieces of the pie. When you invest that level of money into a wide receiver that's not necessarily a uniter, not necessarily going to be your leader, it takes away from other assets you could use to build out your squad. And that's what we're seeing take place with the Giants. Of course, Odell deserves this money. But in this dynamic, they're still not going to win. They haven't won with him. They didn't win without him. He's on the team right now. They're 1-5.
Jalen Rose, we have a platform here at Jalen and Jacoby. We're on ESPN2. We have a podcast. It's popular. And I think there's a responsibility that comes with this platform to point out some of the injustices that are happening in our society. There is something disgusting happening amongst us. There's an injustice that is so wrong, so dubious, so backhanded that we need to bring more attention to it. And of course, I am talking about the sequel to the film How High being produced and cast without the original stars Method Man and Redman. We have taken it upon ourselves not just to shine light on this monstrosity, but we started a petition that was signed by over 5,000 human beings, saying, why are you making How High 2 without Method Man and Redman? And Jalen Rose, now we have an update. We thought perhaps they were just trying to get some press. They would never do this without Method Man and Redman. This is all some sort of an okey doke that's supposed to get publicity, but it's not. Here's what Redman had to say when he was asked about it. Quote, what happened is that a branch that's under Universal decided they were going to shoot this movie, and they did not need permission from us because we didn't own the rights to How High. Wow. As far as me and Meth know, we were waiting on a new script to read for How High 2. Jalen Rose, they are really serious about not producing Method Man and Redman without. I mean, I can't. They're doing How High 2 without Method Man and Redman. You can see what else Redman went on to say. They've cast it with Lil Yachty. How is this even happening in today's society?
For anybody that has a pulse, you know how much we love Redman, who's in our intro, and Method Man, who contributes to our show really frequently. Oh, and by the way, both of those gentlemen have another thing in common. They have bars.
Bars.
Okay. And they helped create a franchise with How High. I attribute the success of that franchise with these two individuals. For them to try to shoot How High 2 without them is a travesty.
And the idea, Universal's doing this without them. I'm going to boycott all things Universal. You know what? I'm going to boycott the universe. I'm no longer part of this universe if this is the way this is going to go. We'll be back tomorrow. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast.
Thank you.
And, of course, watch Jalen on NBA Countdown.